This podcast is for singers who have music in their soul and want to be in the spotlight. We are INVICTA Vox Radio.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of INVICTA Vox Radio. As always, we are your hosts, Mike and
Angie Lee.
And today we are talking about something that is the ultimate game changer in your progress and in your evolution in becoming better as an artist or whatever it is that you want to do in life. And it really doesn't matter. The secret weapon is the same for everything.
Yep.
And really, it sounds so simple and it sounds so obvious, but it's really all a game of consistency.
Consistency. Yep.
So here's an example. I work out regularly, but back in the day, here was my pattern. I would work out for several months at a time, working out 3 to 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. And then something would happen. Something would get in the way. I might have something with college or whatever it may be.
Holidays, birthdays, vacations.
Yeah. And so I would be like, well, I can miss today. And then today turned into 2 months until I decided to get some motivation. I hit kind of that threshold where it's like, okay, I'm sick of feeling lazy. I'm ready to go do something. Yep. So then I would get back in the gym and go through the same process, make the same progression, and then progress, regress, back and forth.
Because you were stopping and starting consistently.
Right.
So you were consistently stopping and starting.
I was consistently inconsistent.
Yes, exactly.
And so, but the problem with that is it gives you this false sense of actually going somewhere because you're putting in work and it feels like you should be going somewhere, but because you take 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Sometimes it's 1 step forward, 3 steps back.
Yeah, but you ultimately end up staying in the same range.
Yeah.
And so
you stay in maintenance mode, basically.
Right. And the frustrating part about that is it feels like, oh man, I should be making all this progress, but instead I just keep feeling like I'm not going anywhere. And it's like, okay, that's because you're not consistent in your actions, in what you're doing, in actually moving forward on the day-to-day. And so what I found is I initially heard this concept of no days off. And I thought, no days off? Like even with right. Working out and doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, they always say you can have a cheat meal or a cheat day or take one day off a week.
Right.
Type of a thing. Yeah.
And so this concept of no days off at first felt really counterintuitive because it's like, this is specifically with the example of working out and with your body and stuff. But there was always this concept of overtraining and doing all these taking away from your results by doing too much.
Right. You have to take breaks.
Right. But what I ultimately found is now I have this block of time. So this window that's set aside every single day. Mm-hmm. And in that time, some days I push harder. Some days it's just stretching.
Right. That's your window for working out.
And so to kind of bring this into the concept of music and how to get better in music is this still stay with this concept of no days off, but some days you're going to put in intense focus practice. Mm-hmm. And then when you need your day off, you still keep that time set aside. Yeah. But instead of this hyper focused practice, now it's okay, let's just sit down and write a song or sit down and just play and enjoy that side of things and not make it so stressful.
But you know that you're hitting it every single day.
Right.
And that's something to point out with your body. Sometimes you have to take those days where you just listen to your body and you're like, you know what? All I got today is yoga. My body hurts. I got to stretch. I got to take some time to breathe deeply and to slow this down just a little bit. And you still get incredible results by doing that, by shifting a little bit. But knowing that during that time period that you have laid out for yourself, you're not going to just not do anything. right? We're going to still be pushing forward. We're still going to be moving. We're still going to be following the meal plan. We're still going to be counting our calories or whatever that looks like for your body. But that sometimes we got to shift it a little bit.
Right.
And you have to call those audibles and change and course correct on a daily basis often. But knowing that it's never going to be a stop-start thing. It's always going to be a one step, move thing. And knowing that, and that brings us to the idea of pacing, right? That you're going at a pace that you can consistently maintain.
Yeah.
And so, because what happens is when you keep going on this yo-yo of being all in and then kind of falling out of it for a couple months and then being like, oh, I missed it, I got to do it again. And then going all in again, it's hard because you put a lot of effort into that. And restarting takes a lot of effort and time and energy. And then we get really, really frustrated with the result because we're not getting where we want to go, but we know that we're putting the work in. And so oftentimes people just quit altogether, right? Why am I working so hard on my body when it's just this frustrating thing? I'm not losing weight. I'm getting toned, or maybe I'm not putting on weight because I want to. And I'm working so hard and I've put all this time in and look at all my trackers and I've done all this work. And it's like, yeah, you have, but you gave up for 2 months.
Right.
You know, you backstepped. And so it's the same thing when you're working towards your music, or like you said, anything in life. Body is just a really good analogy. It's easy to see that it's all about that consistent stepping every single day. And like you said, some days you don't have as much to give. Sometimes there's just not as much energy or passion in the tank, but you stamp your time card, you put in the work, and you keep moving. And as a result, you see a result.
Right.
And so let's talk about pacing. Why is pacing important?
Well, it's the only way that you're going to stay consistent. Right? Because we see this all the time. And again, we'll
because you light the fire really big and then you go hard and then your body, you can't maintain it.
Right. And so you see this all the time. And again, we're going to go with the body example, but it applies to everything. So don't look at this and go, well, I'm not really into working out.
Yeah,
that's
we're not.
That's not, if you have to be able to take the lesson and the idea from each thing. We're just looking at it from a different perspective, and then we'll bring it back into the music side of things.
Right.
But again, when people go to start diets or working out, a lot of times they'll go from 0 to 100, right? And it's like,
right, because it's like, it's the new year. I got a gym membership. I'm going every day, and I'm gonna run for an hour.
Right.
And you're like, okay.
And it's like, okay, your body's not built for that. Plus, you can only sprint for so long,
right,
before you just run out of gas. And so you see that all the time. People go into the gym, they get super sore, and then it's like, oh, I can't move. I better
After
take
the first
next
week,
5 days off.
And it's burnout.
And so, yeah, it's slower and starting with less. Less is more, and then take your time and build it up, because if you take this no days off approach, then you have to understand you're playing the really long game here.
It's a marathon.
There's no need to jump out and do like an intense amount right from the get-go.
Right.
It's like start where you're at, do a little bit more, and then just keep adding along the way as you get accustomed to a certain volume or your capacity is at a certain level. Then, and you feel like there's more room for you to be able to do more, then add a little bit.
Yeah, it's about building your capacity consistently. That's another piece, because it's like, well, I want to be able to do all of this stuff every single day, and you have a list that's a mile long, and you just can't do it. Well, that's because you're just not at the capacity to be able to handle that much in a day. So it's like you said, the idea is, okay, let's maybe set aside 15 minutes here per day, because you know you can nail it, you know you can hit it, and you're going to get it every day consistently. And once you are mastering that, and it's easy for you, and it's easy for your body and your mind, and everything is just part of who you are, it becomes your lifestyle, then you can add another 15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And you can go longer, and you can go harder. But it's that gradual incrementation of adding and adding and adding, so that you don't go so 100% full fire and then have to dial it all the way back, right? Yeah. It's better to incrementally add. And if you're like, man, I can handle way more than this, then add a little bit more and a little bit more. And then and suddenly, like you said, you grow in capacity. That container that once held everything you could do grows. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden, you're filling it more and more and more, and you can handle it.
Right.
And that's the game. And that's how you don't burn out. Is because you're pacing yourself in a way that you can handle it, that your current capacity can handle, and then you expand and you expand and you expand as you go. And it's gradual. You pace yourself and you stay consistent because, again, you can't actually grow your capacity unless you're consistent.
Right.
Because you just keep the same container and you fill it all the way to the top and it's bubbling over and you're like, oh, I can't handle it anymore. And you dump it out and you're like, okay, in a month I'm going to start filling that container back up. But the size of the container doesn't grow.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And so that's what we see with the yo-yoing, right? So it's all about, like you said, pacing yourself in increments, starting with something you know you can absolutely nail, and then slowly turning up the dial, every week or every month. I wouldn't say every day. Pace yourself a little more than that. But gradually turning up the dial and making sure you're not missing it. You're hitting it every day. It's becoming part of your lifestyle. And then, eventually you're going to have that container, that capacity that you're trying to have, that you really want to have. And you've grown. No days off.
Right. And turning up the dial doesn't necessarily mean that, I'm going to add more time and more time and more time, because at some point you only have so much time in a day.
Right.
But you can also turn up the intensity that you're putting into what you're doing.
How much you do in that
the
time.
Energy.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's also going to come with time, and you just have to build that up. Don't expect it to be there. Mm-hmm. So really what you have to have is kind of this mental capacity, this mental fortitude to be willing to start slow, which is so hard for people.
Well, and it feels slow to you, but it adds up, right? It compounds.
Yeah. It's the funniest thing to me, because people are like, oh, if I'm going to do this, I got to put all my energy into it.
Yeah, and they give up everything. They quit their job. They don't see their family for weeks.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, I'm going to go all in for 5 days a week and then take 2 off on the weekend, because that's my pattern. Yeah, and that's something we've been taught in our society.
That you take the weekend off.
You work on the weekdays and you take the weekend off and you just relax.
Right.
But the thing is, 2 days out of 7?
Our bodies don't work that way. Our minds don't work that way. We can't stay consistent mentally and psychologically by taking, a quarter of the time off.
Right.
You can't do that.
So when you feel like you're hitting that mode where it's like, I need something different, just go into that mode where you're in that recovery, where you're
instead of lifting hard, we're going to do yoga.
Yeah, we're going to stretch. We're going to just go for a walk today. We're going to, with your music, it's like, hey, I'm just going to play songs for fun. I'm just going to get it in, but find the enjoyment in music. And when you do that, it also helps you progress, because you're staying interested. You're relighting that fire as far as keeping the passion for what you're doing going. You're not making it like work every day, because you want to progress. You want to put in the work, but it shouldn't feel like work. You shouldn't dread putting the time into your music every day if that's your passion. And so it shouldn't feel like no days off. Oh my gosh, how am I ever going to have fun? Because it should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And some days you might not feel like practicing. Maybe not dreading it, but you just don't feel like it. You still punch your card.
Yeah.
You still punch your card. Because you can't stop.
Because,
you gotta keep going.
And I don't even remember. I think I heard it on Impact Theory or something. He was talking about a violinist, and he was saying if I take
the violinist was saying this. First chair violinist. Yeah, first chair violinist in an orchestra.
And he was saying, if I take 1 day off of practice, I notice. If I take 2 days off of practice, the conductor notices. And if I take 3 days off of practice, the audience will notice.
Yep,
because it's incredible how fast everything will drop off.
Well, we're talking about muscle memory and muscle atrophy, actually. So if you stop using your muscles, whether it's playing an instrument or singing, if you stop using your muscles, after 2 days, your muscles actually atrophy. So saying that an atrophy means break down, right? They stop working as well. They're not going to be as high functioning. And so if we're speaking to specifically to an anatomical level of how your body works, so that says a lot about working out, right? If we're going back to that analogy, considering I'm going to take 2 days off on the weekend. Well, guess what? You've just automatically lost progress. You just did. Because it's 2 days off, your body's going to start atrophy, right? So it's the same thing when you go to your voice. And you notice whenever you do that, you come back on Monday and you're like, man, Mondays are hard.
Yeah.
Right? They're hard mentally, they're hard physically. It's harder to get back into it if you've taken that time off. So it's the same thing when you're, especially as you get to a higher and higher level where you're getting things dialed in with your craft. If you're taking those days off and you're not visiting your instrument, you're not visiting your voice, you're not visiting your songwriting, and all of these skills and physical things that you've worked on, your body is literally going to not be as good at it. It can't be, because that's what happens and muscles just start to not work as well. Right. And then you have to build that back up and build it back up. And so that's why another reason why I say punch your card, whether you feel like it or not, get something in.
Yeah.
Get it in. And if it has to be more play, like you said, great. Make it more playful, but and have fun with it and experiment and explore. But make sure you don't stop.
Right.
Right?
It's the killer. And that's why people, when they take weekends off, you got to think, you are robbing yourself of like 28, 29% of the practice or the effort that you could be putting in.
Absolutely.
And really, you have more time on the weekends to put into it and energy, because you're not having to do a day job.
Right.
Yeah, most people do.
We're talking about a traditional schedule.
Right. Whatever your days off are.
Yeah.
Typically, for the most people that work the 5 days and
it's
then
the
take 2 off.
Yeah. So that's the game. You know, everyone's always like wanting the magic pill. I think it's hilarious because everyone's always looking for the quick and easy, right? The magic pill. And the funny thing, the magic pill in this situation is not something that's fast. It's not something that's easy. But the secret weapon is consistency. And because then you can also talk about how pacing is what makes it so you can stay consistent.
Right.
But then on top of that, how interest compounds. Right?
Yeah.
How every day you put into your craft, it compounds. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then suddenly you're where you want to be. And it's all about those, like even when you start out small, those 15-minute increments compound. They get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they grow. And even if you just stay at the 15 minutes.
Right.
And so it's so critical to put that time in, to set that time aside for yourself. And for those of you who are super busy, because we're busy people, guys, that's just the culture that we live in these days. We are so blocked out, packed out. First of all, really review your schedule. If you're watching Netflix for 2 hours a day, you have plenty of time. Get the app off your phone. Like,
yeah, and you have to be real with yourself.
Be very real with that. If you're playing video games for hours at nighttime and staying up and all hours of the night so that you have to sleep in the morning, be real with that too. You have plenty of time if that's your life. And then I get it if it's not. If you literally have every minute of your day blocked out, and a lot of people who are parents are in that boat, right? Because your schedule is not your own. But as life goes on, as we adult, we get very, very busy. And so at this point, look at where you can cut the fat. Where can we get rid of just sedation and things that don't matter, that are fun for us, but they don't matter. They're not rewarding for us. They're not purposeful for us. All the fluff. Where can we cut some of that out, first of all? Second of all, where in your schedule can you actually schedule time to work on it?
Yeah, create that block of time.
Yeah, and we do that when we set up focused targets with our students here at the studio. We look at them and say, okay, how many minutes a day can you commit to practicing on your busiest days? What does that look like for you? And some people, especially when they're starting out, or if they've just gotten a new job, or if they're starting college, like whatever that is, they'll say, oh, I can do 15 minutes. I know I can do 15, even on my busy days. I'm like, great. That's where we're going to start. 15 minutes. Okay, so that's every day. What time of day can you consistently hit 15 minutes? And then we look at the schedule. And sometimes there's going to be, if the job calls you in at different hours or whatever, if you have a class schedule that's all weird, that can be hard. But for the most part, they'll say, oh, yeah, 6 p.m. or 10 a.m. or they'll give me a time. And it's like, all right, we're writing this down. We're committing to that 15 minutes at 10 a.m. for the next 8 weeks. And so it's all about not just being consistent and, pacing yourself and having that compounding interest, but it's also about being very real, like you said, Mike, about what your schedule actually looks like, and then actually committing and scheduling time to do it. Because if you just let it happen, it's not going to happen.
Right.
It's got to be purposeful.
Absolutely. And with that, I think we should wrap this puppy up.
Absolutely.
So, how are you going to get better? It's not going to be through leaps and bounds. It's going to be through these small, continual steps over and over and over.
No magic pill here.
So, no magic pill.
Sorry, guys.
Consistency over a long period of time is the secret weapon, for real.
Absolutely.
And the way that you achieve that is, like Angie said, through pacing, and also through making sure that you're strategic about your time and scheduling that block of time in so it's just routine and you hit it every day.
Yep.
All right. And with that, for all you guys who are watching this on YouTube, please comment below, where do you need to be more consistent, and what time of the day are you going to block out to make it happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you not on YouTube, go to your journal, write it down, declare that, get it out into the universe so that that can come back to you and we can start making big changes now.
As always, please share this with anybody that you feel like might benefit from it. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog.
Your cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, share it with any artist you think that it might help, because we want to help more and more artists every single day.
All right, everybody. Until next time.
Peace.